Business Index Climate has an increase of 4.1 basis points. It's the fourth increase in a matter of 4 months. So something's working in Namibia's favor.
Absolutely. I think that the business sector is a lot more confident this time around than we've seen them in quite some time. And I think that they've got a pretty good reason for that. I think consumers are sitting with a lot more money than they had last year, and they'll probably be willing to spend quite a bit come the festive season.
What is it that the business index looks at? What are the variables for economic activity? Consumption is one. What else?
We look at inflation rate, we look at interest rates, there's meat prices as well, fish prices, metal prices, we look at zinc and copper, and then also uranium. That's a pretty important one at the moment. Building statistics that are completed in Namibia, and then in total we're looking at about 13. They're a bit too much to mention all on air right now. Okay,
so some of the key variables have been things like petrol prices, obviously because they have an inflationary effect. Credit extension to the private sector, we've seen that rise significantly. And in the last month, the exchange rate seems a little bit more stable. So what bearing does that have day to day in how businesses operate?
Okay, your exchange rates are pretty important. Since we are a very open economy, we import quite a lot and export even more. So what happens with the exchange rate does have a big impact on local businesses. As far as your credit extension is concerned, that is highly concentrated in the business sector, where they're investing quite a lot in terms of retail space and office building in the capital and some of the major towns. Then for the retailers, a big expense is your fuel, because your distribution costs in Namibia are pretty high. If you consider that we are 2 million people, Windhoek with the highest populations probably has about 350,000 people. The next biggest town being Walfish Bay, sitting at 80,000 people. You can imagine how much transport you have to do just to get your product across the country.
Let's talk about the consumption variable, because we've also seen in this business index climate, quite a positive review for vehicle sales figures, which are up in the month of September. Recently, we've seen retail sales figures also up. But this is an economy where inflation is rising, where unemployment is at 50%, where wages are subdued. So can we really see consistent growth on the consumption side of the economy?
There are quite a number of things that kind of impact on some of these numbers, like your consumer, or not the consumer, your vehicle sales, for instance. We just had our census, and government spent quite a bit of money buying new cars just to be able to cover the census work. So that inflated the numbers somewhat. You've also got a huge influx of Angolans coming to Namibia who actually come and buy goods for their businesses here in Namibia. So that distorts your retail figures significantly as well. As a matter of fact, if you look at your debit card swipes in Namibia, Angolans are now the biggest spenders in Namibia in terms of card swipes, and they're outclassing the likes of the German consumers. So that has distorted the market somewhat, and we expect that to continue for quite some time, particularly towards April when the colder months start, and then the Angolans generally stay away.
Metals prices up. What bearing does that have on the Namibian economy, which is largely a mining-based economy?
Your investments are looking pretty good at the moment. Overall, we're looking at about 2% investment growth across the country, but when you zoom in on mining sector alone, that is about 15%. So a lot of the investment money is heading towards the mining sector. We're seeing old mines being opened up at the moment. You see a lot of new mines coming online, and a lot of EPL activity in terms of trading and new registrations.
Manufacturing, what component does that have to the business index? Because we know that to a large extent it's an importer-based economy, a net importer, and there is a big push right now to start doing beneficiation, value add, because that's seen as the drivers of job creation in Namibia.
Manufacturing is a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, you've got the fishing industry that is struggling in terms of landing fish. So their activity, particularly the onshore processing, is taking a bit of a beating at the moment. But then on the other hand, you've got cement manufacturing that has just started in Namibia. So that's going to inflate the numbers because of the base effects from last year that were literally non-existent. But the big one there is also your beer manufacturing, your breweries. And they they are in a very good time leading up into the festive season. So they're running 24/7, and they have pretty strong numbers this time of the year.
And then just broadly a macro perspective, the competitive advantages that Namibia has to offer, because as investors clamor to come to Africa, they can't just move into the traditional hegemons, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya. They have to look at other alternatives. What would Namibia be offering?
I think probably our strongest advantage is our banking sector. I think we've got a very strong banking sector. I think we came out of the recession literally unscathed. At the worst point, I think your bad loan ratio was as high as about 3%. It's down below a percentage point right now. So you've got a pretty solid banking sector, which is funding bankable business projects pretty well at this point.